Hello YouTube, my name is Tyler and this is the last week of April reading vlog. So at the end of last vlog I talked about all the books I was carrying over. I was carrying over 3 books and to be quite honest all of them are kind of close to being finished. Well, I did finish one of them, so the other 2 are also close to being finished. But I finished On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. I'm gonna give this 4 stars, I think. I enjoyed it, but I did find it just like a little confusing in the like geometry of the world. The art is like just slightly more on the abstract side, so sometimes following like the motion through panels was confusing to me. We also don't get like a lot of backstory about like this universe. So sometimes that just left me feeling a little disoriented. However, in the back it does mention that this used to be a webcomic, or it started out as a webcomic, so maybe that kind of explains that vibe a little bit. However, the art is absolutely stunning. There are some pages that are just like beautiful panels. You know, on their own, the abstractness does make it very beautiful. It just sometimes makes it difficult to understand what is actually happening in the story. But as it goes on, there is a little more explanation and kind of ties in these 2 different storylines. So this book is about Mia mostly. It's told through 2 different storylines. So one is like the present storyline where Mia has joined this like restoration crew. So they pilot around to other like buildings and planets to restore these buildings, but she seems to be sad in this timeline. And then the other timeline flashes back and it's Mia in school like 5 years previously, and her relationship to Grace at this school. And Grace seemingly has some sort of secret, and they're dating and she's like, I can't tell you everything, and eventually, I mean, I don't know if it's a spoiler, eventually she has to leave, like they get separated. So the story is told through those 2 timelines and eventually they come together. There is threads through both timelines that eventually come together, I don't know, like 3/4 in, maybe something like that. And you learn a little bit more about Grace and some of the people on the ship, and the place that Grace is from and why she had to leave. And it is about this like relationship that Mia had with Grace and I guess love enduring. And yeah, there's like a lot of like queerness in this, which is fun. Women loving women. There's a non-binary character named Elle or Elliot, and they don't speak. So there's stuff going on with Elle that you learn through the book. Anyways, I liked it. I did find it a little confusing at points, but it wasn't anything that like made me hate it or anything. Like I said, I thought the art was beautiful. There was even some snow panels in the later sections. I'm not going to be able to find it, which I don't know. Apparently I'm just a sucker for snow panels in graphic novels. Oh, and also the spaceships in this are fish. Like they're shaped like fish. Did I show you that panel? That's a spaceship. It's like a, I don't know, like a koi fish, goldfish. betta fish. I don't know, the fish with the like very floppy fins. Anyways, I thought those were really cute. Yeah, overall enjoyed it. I would recommend it if that sounds like something you're into. It is very spacey, like seemingly, I'm not 100% sure, seemingly like the buildings themselves are what are like floating out in space, and like the buildings can travel. It's not necessarily like all planetary, although there are planets too, but there's just like a lot of like galaxy, starry panels, things like that. Overall, it was a wholesome, good read. I did well up a little bit near the end, so like it was a good time. So yeah, 4 stars for On a Sunbeam. I am gonna try and finish the audiobook I've been listening to for a while because I'm sick of listening to it, and I don't have hockey tonight, so I might sit down and try and finish that tonight. So I might just buckle in and finish the last, I think it's like hour and a half or something. So you might see me again later tonight. And then I think I'll probably finish the Seep tomorrow. So yeah, I'm gonna finish all the things I'm reading in like the next 24 hours, and then I'm gonna have to start a whole bunch of new stuff. So yeah, I will talk to you later. Bye. Hi, hello. I told you I would see you again today. It is just about time for me to go to bed, but I finished listening to, if I can pull it up, The Rise and Fall of the Neoliberal Order, America and the World in the Free Market Era by Gary Gersel. I've been reading this for a while. It's quite a lengthy audiobook. I only gave it 3 stars. I really don't have a whole lot to say, but I am just making sure I record this clip now because I have a feeling I'm gonna forget to do it tomorrow because I have a dentist appointment. I don't know. I don't feel like this book like really just like blew me out of the water or really was anything spectacular for me personally, but I don't think it was a bad book. I mean, I got the book from Jamel Bowie. He recommended it or mentioned it in his podcast. And if Jamel Bowie likes it, I'm sure there is value to it. It just didn't do a whole lot for me personally. I will say the one concept that came out of this that I found most interesting was neo-Victorianism. So the Victorian era had a lot of like strict moral attitudes, very prudish, you know. This is like where it comes from, like they couldn't even show their ankles, and a woman showing her ankle was very scandalous. So a lot of like religious uptight morals, and he talks about how in the 80s with Reagan and bringing in neoliberalism, where all the markets are free and everyone needs to like make the best monetary choices, and if you are poor, it's your fault basically. So there was a lot of moralizing that was happening at this time, teaching people financial responsibility and talking about welfare queens and things like this, adding a moral character to economics and things. And not just that, you know, obviously he talked about the moral majority and Jerry Falwell and all that stuff too. It's all tied together. But I did find that to be kind of an interesting reason to think about why there was also this increase in right-wing evangelical moralizing that really seemed to like truly kick off in I guess the late 70s, early 80s. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Those are my feelings. I gave it 3 stars. I will see you tomorrow probably because I am planning on finishing the Seep sometime soon. So I will talk to you then. Bye. Hello. So it is April 25th and I have just finished reading The Seep by Hannah Porter. This book I ended up giving a 3.5, so it got rounded up to 4. I think a little bit of the issue I had was the Goodreads book description makes it seem a little more, I don't know, high intensity, not necessarily high action, but like a very intense read. And like I would say it's relatively fast paced in that like a lot of stuff does happen in the short amount of pages, but it's a very relaxed with all the things that happen. And I feel like, honestly, this kind of, the rereading the book description, it spoils quite a bit. I would say if you could, I'm going to read the first paragraph because I feel like that's kind of where you should stop reading if you pick up this book. Trina Goldberg Onika is a trans woman whose life is irreversibly altered in the wake of a gentle but nonetheless world-changing invasion by an alien entity calling itself the Seep. Through the Seep, everything is connected. Capitalism falls, hierarchies and barriers are broken down. If something can be imagined, it is possible. And then, actually, I'll read the next sentence, half of the next sentence, just because I think that also is helpful. Trina and her wife, Deba, live blissfully under the Seep's utopian influence. And then Deba decides to make a life-changing decision that affects not only her, like it's a choice for herself, but it affects her relationship and it affects Trina. So I will say the first couple chapters, I was loving it. It just like throws you in, like you're not seeing the alien invasion, and it's not an alien you see. It's very much like a drug experience because the Seep comes through the water. At least initially. It does seem like as you get further into the book, they have kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They have crystallized, nope, I don't know. They have like made a stronger, boiled down versions of the Seep in different forms and stuff like that. I'm sure when I'm editing this, I'm gonna know exactly what word I'm looking for, but I can't find it right now. Folks, the word is synthesize. The beginning was very interesting. I really liked just kind of like being thrown into it and kind of just like, it was almost pandemic-like in a way because it did come through the water. And so there was like, I don't know how to explain it. It's not like it is showing a pandemic. It's not like you're seeing an alien invasion. It's none of those, like you're not seeing anything. But you can feel the fear, I guess, that is being talked about in the beginning. I don't know. I really liked the beginning. It hit that nice little sweet spot of being just kind of weird and kind of just throwing you into it, but also not being like completely opaque, and purposefully like difficult to understand. It hit that sweet spot for me. As it goes on, it becomes more of Trina's story, which I like didn't dislike necessarily, but it became much more emotional than I expected for this. And it's definitely like I said, strangely not slow pace. It's strangely gentle, I guess. It's an oddly soft story. The like back half did not work as well for me as the front half when we really started getting into like the philosophical, religious, I don't know if it's not necessarily religious, but like thinking about the soul and the self and the body and the brain, and that makes it sound much more like intense or difficult than it actually is. It's very easy to read and comprehend. I just like was not invested in that, but I understood where it was coming from, if that makes sense. Like, I'm trying to talk about it in a way that doesn't spoil it, but I just don't know if it's going to be possible. But the way the seep works is everyone kind of becomes interconnected through the seep, and they understand the world better, and they can, like, if they're on the seep and they're drinking alcohol, they can like feel their liver cells dying, and they can connect to trees and plants and other people. And I don't think it's necessarily like reading minds, but there's this just like intense connection that is happening. And so as it goes on, we're seeing this tension where Trina is still kind of stuck in the old world, where she's still doing stuff that people find weird, where she's like, people can modify themselves, and she's like not really doing that, and she still prefers to drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes instead of seeping. And so there's this tension of that. It's so difficult to talk about because it is such a short book, and I feel like if I get any further into it, I'm like really gonna spoil it. And I do think people should read this, even though it's only a 3.5 for me. I do think like the emotional aspects of this would work for a lot of people. I do think the things it was saying about like death and like memory and what makes us can be interesting, and I mean are interesting, but like I don't know. I think I went into it with a little bit of different expectations than what this book actually is. So I would go into this with the expectations of it being actually like more of a internal emotional look at what happens when the world changes completely, I suppose. And, you know, the specific physics of the seep help move along that kind of like emotional element of the story. This book is not about like learning about the seep, if that makes sense. The seep helps you learn more about the characters, if that makes sense. I don't want to say like the seep is in the background, because it's not that way necessarily. I do think it's pretty forward in this book, but learning about the seep is not the goal of this book. So I have rambled about this way longer than I thought. I'm officially not reading anything, so I'm gonna start a couple of things tonight. I have Nature Poem by Tommy Pico in audiobook. I'll probably listen to that during hockey intermissions tonight. And I am going to start We Were Briefly Gorgeous. What is that book called? On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This checked out to me last night, so I'll go ahead and start that today too. And so those will be the two new things I start today. And then I have a feeling I'll probably start at least one physical book tomorrow, if not two. I'll start the library book I got last week, The Biography of X, and I might start a nonfiction. I'm just not sure. Like, I'm kind of in the mood for a nonfiction, but we'll see. We'll see. The library book definitely takes precedent at this point, though. So, yeah, that's kind of where my reading is at. I will talk to y'all later. Bye. Hello. It is April 26th, and I just finished listening to Nature Poem by Tommy Pico. This is a poetry book. I will say that this did have a little bit more of a narrative arc than some of the other poetry books I have read. It is kind of him grappling with the expectations put on Indigenous writers. So it kind of starts with like him saying he never wanted to write a nature poem. And throughout the book is kind of grappling with being Native and living in a white settler colonized country, world, society. I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars. Me and his writing style really did not click that well. I honestly found it very disorienting the way he would go between, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, sometimes he would just like take an abrupt left turn and start talking about like dating and fucking and all sorts of things, and like it just wasn't working for me personally. So like that makes it like, it just made it difficult for me to like truly enjoy this. However, there were some interesting parts and poems that I enjoyed. In general, I did really like the ones that he talked about, like his ancestors and how he can connect with his ancestors. Like near the end talks about how like when he looks at the sky, he realizes it's like the only thing that's the same now as it was back then when his great-grandparents and ancestors were alive. But yeah, he would go between like that in these like really emotional, deep poems, and then like the next poem or within the same poem he would talk about like what dating in New York City is like. And so I found that stuff to be very jarring. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, that's my feelings. I gave it 3.5 because the parts that I did like, I really liked. But a good majority of it like just didn't click for me. But by no means it like makes it bad or makes him a bad writer. I'm no poetry expert. Honestly, the simpler the poetry, probably the better for me in understanding. So, you know, that's a me issue and not a Tommy Pico issue. If you like poetry, you might enjoy this. I did appreciate like a more clear thread through all the poems though. That does help me personally enjoy a collection of poetry a little bit more. I think I'm also, if I continue to read any more poetry this year, I think I will continue listening to it in audiobook form. I do think in general that works better for me. Like, I don't know what it is. I can just understand the plot of an individual poem better when I can hear it how it's supposed to be heard. So while I might be missing some of the like textual geography, how it is laid out on a page, and that can be important to a poem, I just struggle reading them, and hearing apparently just like helps it click in my head. So any other poetry will probably be in audio form. Yeah, so there's that. I'm working on Earth God, I cannot pronounce this book's name apparently. On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous. I only read a couple pages last night, so hopefully I'll read more today. Oh my god, I'll probably start Biography of X today. So I will see y'all later. Bye. Howdy, it is April 30th. It is the last day of April. I am planning on finishing up some things and closing out this vlog today. I just finished reading On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. However, I found it's split into 3 parts. I found part 1 to be really strong. I cried reading part 1, whereas part 2 and 3 were less enjoyable for me to read, but not in a bad way. I just like, they just didn't hit and connect with me in the way that part 1 did. So Ocean Vuong is a poet, and you can definitely feel that poet vibe through this whole book. It's very lyrical and poetic, which is usually not my cup of tea, but I did enjoy this. It's really interesting because I got like 3/4 of the way in before I really realized that this is a novel. Like, I knew it was a novel. I added it to my TBR because Kayla read it and she talked about how much she loves novels written by poets. It says a novel like on the cover, but it reads so, like, it just felt like a memoir to me the whole time I was reading it. And then at some point I just realized, like, I was like, oh, wait, this is fiction. Like, this is not Ocean Vuong's life. This is a fiction book. And that, I think, is really something special, where you're reading something that is fictional, but it just feels so real, that, like, you're having to remind yourself, like, this is not a real person, a real story. I do think it worked for me partially because it is, it definitely has like that internal vibe to it that I like in stuff like My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I guess like really all of Tessa Moshfegh's work is like that kind of internal vibe. And this definitely has like a more internal nature to it. It is a letter to his mother about just kind of like his life and experience as a Vietnamese refugee in New England. And like the first part is like when he's younger. The second part is kind of his teen years and his first love. And part 3 is kind of like, I guess like his 20s, like college-y age, and dealing with death. So yeah, but it's like told, it's like written to his mother. And yeah, it's really hard to talk about because there's not like necessarily a plot. It goes back and forth between memories and timelines a lot. It can be very metaphorical. It can jump around between 2 different stories because it's kind of almost told in like little vignettes, and some are longer than others. Yeah, so, but I enjoyed it. I will say just like a little bit of I don't want to say like content warning, I guess, not necessarily trigger warning. There is a scene of like animal abuse, might be too soft of a word, like animal cruelty / torture. It's not like a super long scene, but it is a scene. I did kind of have to stop and take a breath and then come back. Part 2, there is a lot of sex going on. Honestly, from part 2 on, there was way more sex than I would have anticipated. If knowing this was like a letter written to the main character's mother. And a little, it's not graphic necessarily, but more graphic than I would expect someone writing to their mother about. Like, it makes sense in the story, but did take me by surprise. And then the third thing is the last part does deal with death. I mean, there's like death throughout the whole thing, but there is some end-of-life care, dealing with someone as they're dying, which is something I'm kind of a little sensitive to. So I thought I would throw it out there, being those being topics that were just like a little bit difficult for me to grapple with, or made me a little bit uncomfortable just because of my own issues, my own life experience. So I thought I would throw that out there for anyone considering reading this. I don't think it makes it a bad book or anything like that. I just thought, you know, it's worth letting people know that those things are in there, because I didn't know they were in there when I started. I think I'll just leave it at that. So 4 stars, enjoyed it. I do recommend it. I get why people love this, why it has the positive praises it does, why it got the accolades and all the things that it got. It's good. It's really good. Yeah. Okay, so I have one more book that I'm trying to finish before the month closes out so I can close this vlog and record my wrap up. So it's an audiobook. I think I'm gonna go walk on the treadmill and listen to the last like 3 hours of it. I don't plan on walking for 3 hours because I'm not listening to it at 1x speed, but yeah, I'm gonna go do some stuff. I'm gonna listen to that, and then I'm gonna come back with those thoughts and close out this vlog. All right, bye-bye. Hello. I have just finished listening to Catch and Kill by Ronan Farrow. I think I'm gonna end up giving this 4.5 stars, so it'll get rounded up on Goodreads to 5, but this was a surprising listen, I guess. This has been on my TBR for a while, and I kept putting off reading or listening to this because I don't know, when all this information about Harvey Weinstein was coming out, it's not necessarily that I avoided it, but I never like really got into it because I was like, yeah, like everyone knows that women are sexually harassed in Hollywood and then their careers are threatened, so they never come forward. However, this is actually much more complex than I had realized. There's a cat at the door. So as I was saying before Tiger Cat had to get in, it was more complex than I realized. I was just expecting like a lot of lawyering, and there was definitely lawyering going on to keep these women quiet. But he managed to wiggle out of a like actual police investigation. I can't remember when exactly it was, like within the timeline, but a woman like got the police involved, and they got on tape like him threatening and basically admitting that he had previously sexually assaulted her. The police had that on tape, and he still got out of it. And now another cat is at the door. So as I was saying, like he managed to wiggle out of like an NYPD investigation. He had like actual I mean, it says spies in the subtitle, but like I was not expecting like actual real ass spies, people following the women, but also like following Ronan Farrow himself as he's investigating this. And he was like actively involved in like trying to kill the story at NBC, which like I just didn't know. And I definitely didn't know all the like fallout from NBC specifically. So Ronan Farrow was working at NBC when he started this story, and the pressure from Harvey Weinstein was part of the reason why they were trying to kill the story. But also like NBC had like a very toxic environment for women, and so like they were also trying to kill it from that angle, because it if you're willing to look at the sexual transgressions that Harvey Weinstein was doing, what would make you stop and like not push to investigate things you might see or hear at your own workplace, if that makes sense. So at the end of the book, you hear about the Matt Lauer stuff, which like had a little bit of a connection to this story because he had talked to Matt Lauer as he was starting investigating Harvey Weinstein. And the like corporate CEO boss types that also ended up getting the axe at NBC because of sexual harassment, assaults, things of that nature, which I like completely did not know anything about. So that was really interesting and surprising information to me. And I mean, even after the story came out, Ronan Farrow had gone to a different publication because NBC would not let him continue his investigating. Even after it came out, they were still like trying to not tell the story. So all the other news channels were talking about this bombshell information about Harvey Weinstein, and NBC was just like, they did not want to talk about it. So that was just really interesting. It was a lot more complex than I had realized. There was a connection between like people working for Harvey Weinstein and people who had worked for Donald Trump, his campaign in 2016, that were like actively killing stories about Donald Trump during the 2016 election, and is connected to the Stormy Daniels stuff that has come back up now that he's been indicted. So yeah, it was, I'm really glad I took the time to finally listen to that. There was a lot of names. It's possible I might have been able to hold on to the names a little bit better if I had read it, but also I'm always just bad at names anyway, so it might not have been any better in physical written form. The only thing that really kind of bothered me specifically about the audiobook was there were, I don't know if it's called needle drops in an audiobook, but there was like music, like not at the end of every chapter, but in a way to like build suspense and stuff like that. And I just like don't love that, especially in a nonfiction book. You know, if it was a fiction book, I can see like trying to set the mood and really build the suspense or whatever in a fiction book, but in audio or in a nonfiction audiobook, it kind of just leaves a little bit of a icky taste in my mouth, just because I don't know, I just don't need the mood to be set. I should be able to make my own inferences about what is happening or what had happened in real life, I guess. However, I will say Ronan Farrow was an excellent narrator. He did like all sorts of different voices for all the different people, which really surprised me, like lots of different accents and different voices, and did a really excellent job. So yeah, I am gonna give it 4.5 stars. Let's finish out this vlog. I think I read 6 books this week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Indeed, I read 6 books this week. On a Sunbeam, The Rise and Fall of the Neoliberal Order, The Seep, Nature Poem, On Earth We Were Briefly Gorgeous, and Catch and Kill. So yeah, let's see. It was a pretty good week too. 1 5-star, 4 4-stars, and a 3-star read. So that's pretty good, I think. Obviously, Catch and Kill was my favorite read this week, and the 1 3-star was The Rise and Fall of the Neoliberal Order, but like that wasn't a bad read per se. It was just kind of dense and a little dry, but not bad. So yeah, that is this reading vlog. Yeah, I'm not gonna even pretend I know what video is coming up next. So I will see y'all next week with a video of some sort. All right, bye-bye.